Hi, I'm Nikki Lowe, and welcome to the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show, where I share insights and interviews that support women to combine their family, work, and life in a more successful and sustainable way. Tell me this, do you remember the movie Groundhog Day? In it, Bill Murray plays a newscaster reporting on the annual Groundhog Day festivities. He wakes up every day to the same thing happening again and again, and he tries to make these small changes, but every day it just resets and replays. Groundhog Day has now found its way into our modern language to mean a situation in which a series of unwelcome or tedious events appear to be happening over and over again in exactly the same way. Have you seen the movie? Well, that's exactly how I feel when it comes to cooking for my family as a working mum. If I'm not careful, it can become a source of stress, either feeling like I'm stuck in the kitchen, constantly cleaning or cooking and not spending any time with my kids after a day at work, or I reach for the easy solution, which often isn't healthy, and then I feel guilty for it. And I know I'm not alone in this. So when I stumbled across today's guest's book in my local supermarket and started to follow her approach, I loved it, and it made a huge difference in my life. So I reached out to her to see if she'd come and share her insights and wisdom with you here today. And I'm so excited that she said yes. Suzanne Mulholland is a time-saving guru and a family cooking expert, and she's the author of the Batch Lady books. Suzanne has applied her background as a time management trainer in her own life to such massive success that she started sharing it on the internet under the brand of the Batch Lady. She's now helped thousands of people to cook quick, easy, homemade and healthy family meals for the freezer to save time, money and waste, and is a popular social media influencer. Suzanne lives with her family on a working hill farm in the rural Scottish borders, and I can't wait to dive into this conversation with her. She shares so many nuggets and practical tips and strategies that we can implement that I have no doubt that from listening to this, she can save you at least an hour a week. And I'm being conservative there, so it's a good one. So let's dive in and bring on Suzanne. So welcome, Suzanne. I'm really excited that you've joined me today, so thank you for your time.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be on this. You are my kind of woman.
And you are mine too. So I always love to start with somebody's story, and I'd love to hear how you kind of got into becoming the Batch Lady and your journey that led you to do this work.
So I was teaching time management to medical reps down in London for a big pharmaceutical company. I was living in Edinburgh at the time, just newly married and travelling up and down. And time management is my passion. I was basically I realized I couldn't keep working when I had my son because I was flying up and down all the time. And once I had him, I became a stay-at-home mum for a bit. And I realized that when I was weaning him and the fact that I had to go and make dinner every night for my husband as well, which who knew you were going to do that when you had to say I do every single night, Groundhog Day. And I realized actually, if I'm batching his sort of, mushed up food, then actually, can't I just batch our own food as well at the same time? So I started to look at YouTube at the time, which was very new, and sort of started to see what was happening for batching out and the ethos, and tons of it was American. And so I followed these American batchers for a while, and then I thought, actually, I want to take the concept but make it British and do lots of British food, do shepherd's pie and various things that we like to eat as well. And also a lot of batching was then about big stews, big vats of things and making 10 portions. I didn't want to do that. I want to make only 2 portions, one for tonight, one for another day. And so I started to then come up with the concept of using new modern food that we all like to eat, not that old-fashioned batching food, but new, gorgeous, lovely, healthy food. So then I went on to have my daughter, and I was helping run the family business and the family farms. And I always just kept batching all the time. It was very organized and part of our life. And tons of mums said, how do you do it? Tell me your secret. And so I had 20 women come around to the house, showed them what to do. This was about 3 years ago. Showed them my 10 meals in an hour, and they said, brilliant. you should put this on YouTube. It will be amazing. So I put a couple of videos up on YouTube. And the long and the short of it is we are now published with 3 books with HarperCollins. There's an audiobook coming out. I've signed a book deal for some more books coming out next year. And it is now my full-time job as the Batch Lady.
I absolutely love that story. Doing what you love and comes naturally and being able to share that with the world. What a story.
Yeah, but I'm not a foodie. I'm not really into, I love food. I love cooking, but only when I want to. I think there is a time and a place to enjoy cooking when you've got friends over and stuff. But when you've been working all day, that's not the time that I want to enjoy sort of like laying out ingredients and getting started cooking.
Yes. And the reason that I found your book and fallen in love with your methodology is that I used to love cooking, and it used to be my way of relaxing at the end of a workday before I had children, and then add children into the mix. And it actually became quite a stressful experience. Either I hadn't got time and was giving them food that I felt guilty for, or it was that witching hour for my children. Either they didn't want to eat what I'd cooked, or I just wasn't at my best. I'd look at my fridge with all my ingredients and think, I have no idea what to cook. So batching has been a lifesaver for me. And I've batched for quite a few years, but on and off, I've never found a methodology until I discovered your book. And now it just really works for us as a family.
Oh, fantastic. I'm so glad. And you're so right about the witching hour. I mean, I get in at 10 to 6. I've got 2 kids that need, change from school, homework done, fed, probably like everybody else listening to this, 2 dogs that need walked. And it's not a time to start from scratch, I think. I mean, I think, gosh, we should be kinder to ourselves. We should allow ourselves to just have a meal that almost feels like somebody else made it. In fact, I often say these days, it's about being kind to your future self. Every time you batch a meal and put it in the freezer, then when you use that, you can pat yourself on the back and thank your past self for being kind to you.
Yeah. And actually, as you say, it's not just about the cooking either. It's about the prep and the tidying and washing up that goes along with it each time you do that.
Yeah, because you add 20 minutes prep, 20 minutes cook time, and then probably 20 minutes doing the dishes. There is an hour out of every single one of your nights. And that hour is that prime time. I often talk about differences in time, that sort of witching hour or that evening when you come in, your evening hours, 3 hours of one evening is way more valuable to you than say 3 hours on a Saturday morning when you've got all day to hang about. So it's about using those valuable hours wisely. And for example, last night I came flying in from work, picked up the kids. I had enchiladas that were already made and defrosted. I put them in the oven. I didn't have to do anything. In 25 minutes, it was ready. I did nothing. I just put it in, took it out. I had one dish to clean. That was all I did. That is batching.
Brilliant. So obviously we're talking about batching, but for some people that might be a whole new concept. So can you explain what we mean by this?
Okay, yeah. So I always split it up. So physical batching. So we'll talk about physical batching first. That is just batching food. So taking one meal that you have made and making more than one of them at the same time. That is all it is. So for example, if I was going to make a fish pie, instead of making one, I would make 2. By the time you've got your ingredients, thought about what you're going to make, laid everything out, and made it, if you make a second dish exactly the same while you're making the first dish, on average, it takes you 4 minutes to double a batch. Okay, so to double a recipe takes 4 minutes. So that is saving you 1 whole hour. Well, say it takes an hour to make it usually when you've came in from work and you're making it. And by the time you clear up and everything, because everything is halved in time. The clear up time, the buying of the food, everything is halved because you have doubled it. So that is batching predominantly. If you double a recipe, you're batching it. That's the easiest way to think about that in terms of physical batching. The other thing is I often talk about mentally batching. Mentally batching is a bit like what you mentioned the other day on your grid. You had a really nice grid that showed survival mode and mindfulness mode. And when you're in that survival mode, you're stressed, it's urgent, you're flying to the shops after work, grabbing anything you can, pesto pasta, that'll do. And you get home and they go, oh, we had it the other night. And you feel rubbish, and you're like, I'll try better tomorrow. And then there's the mindful side where you have actually just thought about it, like maybe the day in advance, maybe 3 days in advance, right? What am I going to do on Wednesday? And that's going to be a late work night. I could make this, and actually I could take something out of the freezer. Or you could turn around and say, actually, I'm finished early on Tuesday. I'm going to make spaghetti bolognese and I'm going to double it. One for the fridge, one for the freezer. Batching is very mindful. It's about looking at an area of your life that is a Groundhog Day area, and how can I make that better?
Brilliant. And I love how you've kind of sectioned that out, because often we don't only think about it in terms of the physical, but actually the other benefits are huge.
Yeah, and a great way to look at it is, let's look at, say, something like Netflix. You know, years ago, we'd all watch TV, wouldn't we? I mean, I'm showing my age now at 45, but we'd all watch TV, and you'd have to watch the adverts, and you'd have to wait on the next it finishes, and you've got to see what happens next week. Well, nowadays, if you watch half a program and you get fed up, you pause it and you think, I'll watch the other half the next again day. And batching is exactly the same. Make food when you want to make food. Pause it in the freezer and eat food when you want to eat food. They are two separate different things, making food and eating food. They don't have to be done at the same time.
Never thought about it like that, but that's so true. It was interesting when I knew you were coming on this podcast. I went out to my community to ask them what they'd like me to ask you. And I had several people say, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So for somebody that's completely new to batch cooking and has probably been raised and is used to doing that just-in-time cooking, what advice would you give them, or what insights can you share around where you would even start with this?
Okay, so there's a few things. I'm going to give you lots of top tips, but I'm also going to say, if you ever buy my first book, Shop Once, Cook Once, Eat Well All Week, it's the introduction that you really want. Okay, so it is a cookery book, but the introduction talks you through everything, and it's set on a mindset of my mindset, which is a busy working mum. So the things that I enjoy, what I don't want to do, and how to do it easy. So that will give you a step-by-step guide. But basically what you want to do, if you don't even know where to start, is you want to sit down, look at your recipe, look at the meals that you eat on a day-to-day basis. In the UK, we all eat the same 9 meals over and over and over again in general. So you're generally only got 9 meals. Now you will eat different stuff at other times, but your core meals as a family, you know, they are going to eat that. You know, for example, ours would be pesto pasta and a lasagna, a chili. It would be Mexican enchiladas, you know, that type of thing that I know I can put down and everybody will eat. So you've got your meals there. Then you want to go and make sure that they're freezable. So you can do that, because I'll have a freezable recipe in my book, but most of them will be freezable. And you then want to think about, what nights ahead am I not busy, and what nights am I really busy? What nights can I double the portion of whatever I'm making? And every time you make that meal, double the portion. So when you first start, whatever you're going to cook, just try to double it, half of it in the freezer, eat the rest. Forget about the stuff that's in the freezer at first, and before you know it, you've got a little vat of food ready to go for those busy nights when you don't want to cook. That is as simple as it is.
Brilliant. And what I love about your books is that you've educated me on what can be frozen and at what point in the cooking process it can be frozen, because actually I couldn't believe how naive I was to that. I was like, oh gosh, that can be frozen. Oh, I hadn't even thought about that. So
yeah,
really
it's
insightful.
The hardest part. Thank you. It's the hardest part of it, to be honest, and that's what scares people. What can be frozen? What can't be frozen? How do you reheat food? Like there's plenty of meals that I do that are called dump meals, which is where, like, if you're doing, say, a stuffed chicken breast wrapped in bacon, then you can just make that and put it directly into the freezer without cooking it. You want to cook it when it comes out. So it's not about feeling like it's leftovers. You're cooking it from scratch. And lots of those dump bags, if you've got any children above 8 years old, you can get them sat at the kitchen table making them, because they don't need to go near a cooker. They're just assembling ingredients and putting it in a bag and labeling it. So if you're busy and you want to do that, that's well worth a go as well. But in terms of reheating meals, you just want to make sure that whatever you cook, when it comes out the freezer, it's piping hot. And you pretty much, that's all you really need to know. So, yeah, sorry, I forgot your first question, Nikki. Did I go off on a tangent?
No, you absolutely answered that, which was, where do you start? And I think the other bit that you've covered as well is around the freezing part, because I think, I don't know if we said this before we hit record, but actually your zone of genius isn't just the cooking piece, it's the whole methodology that goes behind organization and optimizing your time and energy. And in your book, you've got whole sections on how to actually freeze food and how to store it in, your freezer looks like this amazing, like bookshelf, I think.
Yeah.
So somebody that may not have seen that, what advice or tips would you give around how you store food to make it really easy and practical?
Yeah, very easy, guys. Just buy some freezer bags. Now you can buy plastic or you can buy reusable. It's entirely up to you. And you want to put whatever you've got into your bag and you want to freeze it flat. So say, for instance, it's chili. You want to freeze it flat and make sure it's all labelled, or you'll end up with a UFO, an unidentified frozen object, which you'll have no clue what it is. You will go to take out raspberry sorbet on an ice cream tub. The kids will be so excited and you'll find it's beetroot soup and everybody will be devastated. So yes, always label. But freezing flat in bags really helps. It helps for two reasons. One, it doesn't matter how small your freezer is, you can pack in those meals. They pack up like library books. Also, when you take them out, if you think about it, they're so thin, they defrost very quickly. Where if you've put something in a huge tub, it's going to take like 3 days to defrost. So, you want a little bag, and also that bag is airtight. So it means if you've forgotten to take something out, you can just put it in some freezing cold water, only freezing cold water, and it'll defrost in 15 minutes.
Brilliant. See, it's all these tips, they're amazing. So I've also heard from people that they like to be kind of spontaneous and flexible with what they eat. So they might not know on that morning what they want. And they feel that batch cooking almost is too planned and structured for them.
Yeah,
what would your
I get that
response be to
completely.
that?
Yeah, I completely get that, actually. Because I often tell people to meal plan because it's good to have a plan for the week. And I have a little meal planner book, but I also then go on and say, only meal plan 4 of your meals. If you've meal planned 4 of your meals, you'll use those meals at some point during the week. You might not fancy it on the Tuesday, but you'll have it on the Wednesday. And then it gives you options on the other nights that you don't fancy it. So the other thing is, just because you've made them and frozen them doesn't mean you need to eat them. I quite often might change my mind. What I do is I set a timer on my iPhone at 6 p.m. So it's a timer that comes on it's an alarm that comes on every single day. At 6 o'clock, I'm generally standing in my kitchen because we eat at 6:30 and we've just walked in the door. So I've generally started preparing or heating up or whatever we're having. And the alarm goes off and I open my freezer door and then decide what we're having tomorrow. So I only defrost 1 day at a time. That's how I like to work it. It allows me then to choose whatever's in the freezer and what we fancy.
Brilliant. And I love what you said also about the way that you freeze it gives you that quickness as well, that you could go, I actually want this right now. And 15 minutes later, it's defrosted. So
yeah, I would always say it's better to take it out the night before if you can, if it's something that should defrost. And then also in my newest book, the Healthy Family Favourites, I give you a whole page on everything, all the recipes that are in that book that can just be cooked from frozen. So if you wanted to, that's a good starting point. If you think I'm never going to remember to take it out, then just always make the ones that cook from frozen. That way you open your freezer, you pull it out, you put it straight in your oven. Things generally take about double the amount of time to cook if they are from fresh to frozen. So you just have to allow more time to cook it. That's all.
Yeah. And I think, again, what you've done genius in your book is with the prep. So, for example, one of the things that sprung into my mind is that you've got, I think, a page with sweet corn fritters and courgette fritters, and you literally can prep them, and you've done the organization of the prep to kind of work simultaneously. And that's genius as well.
Yeah. So in fact, in all of my books, and people often never realize this, but all the menus, all the recipes are paired. So if you are making, hold on, I'm just going to flick open the book and just tell you something. Here's one. If you are making fish pie, you can also make fish chowder at the same time. They use similar ingredients. In fact, almost identical ingredients, apart from the differences in the potato, and in the chowder you add some milk. Apart from that, they're the same. So you can therefore have the same ingredients and you're making 2 different meals. So you're getting a fish pie and a fish chowder. And then what I'd say is, If you get into batching in this way, then you double everything and you're making 2 fish pies and 2 chowders. You're then having 1 for one night and 3 go in the freezer. My fish pie takes 5 minutes to make. I mean, 5 minutes, that's all. And that's another thing, actually, Nikki, that's good to chat about, is that I am not snobbish when it comes to food. I am all about practical. I'm all about us getting through life as easy as possible. I think tons of us working mums are treading water, and people just don't see that I'm still paddling underneath the surface as quick as I can to get through that day going, oh, is this going to work? And so I am a massive fan of using cheats. I use ready roll pastry. I use, mashed potato that you can buy at the supermarket that's already mashed for you, because then I can put it on the top of a fish pie in 3 minutes instead of washing, peeling, chopping potatoes. So there's some hacks in there that I think, why not? You're still getting a homemade meal at the end of it, just someone else has done a little bit of the work for you.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Definitely. So I would love to know about your personal batch cooking routine. So how do you actually apply this in your life? So talk me through, is there a particular day you batch? How do you do your meal planning?
Yeah.
Because insights from you would be amazing.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you how I used to do it before I ended up doing a million cookery books and now have frozen meals coming out of my ears as we're now working on the 4th book. But actually, how I still sort of do it as well, because and I'll explain that, is pretty much Monday to Friday. I don't like to cook. Friday night, we always have a takeaway. So I'm on 4 meals a week, Monday to Thursday. I want them batched. So those 4 meals are what I want batched in the freezer. I love nothing better, Nikki, than Saturday morning in my pajamas with Netflix on my iPad. And I watch a film at the same time and like to multitask. And the kids are quite happy. Everybody's quite happy on a Saturday morning being left alone. And I just have the kitchen to myself. And that's where I do my meals. And I love it. I spend 1 hour on a Saturday morning, and I generally put, and not every Saturday morning anymore, but I generally put sort of like 4 or 5 or 6 meals in the freezer. And then I don't think about it for the rest of the week.
Brilliant. And when you approach that Saturday morning, have you planned in advance what you're going to cook, or do you sit there and kind of go through your recipes and you know that you've got most of the ingredients in?
So I generally plan what I'm going to cook. I usually look in my freezer and see what we're quite short of, or see if there's anything that we fancy. I get a delivery because we're quite far out. I live in the farm, the middle of nowhere. So I get a delivery on a Saturday morning. So I time my batching for that same time, because again, if I can get the food delivered, it gets dropped at the front door. I put it all on the kitchen table. I then batch it before I put it away. Does that make sense? I'm not then having to put everything away and then go and find it all again when I decide to cook the meals. I'm just going to do it all at the same time. And that stops me, if you're doing a big batch, you're having to cram all this stuff in your fridge and take up extra space. Instead, just cook it as soon as it arrives. So I always have a delivery come about 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and then I batch till about 11, put it away, and I'm done for the week. That's how I like to do it. And in terms of meal planning, because this is where a lot of mums struggle as well, because you're trying to feed a variety of different people around your table, So what I would say is have a family meeting if you can. So this is what I do with my kids. On the odd occasion, we'll sit down and I'll say, right, everybody's a bit fed up of eating the same stuff. What do you want to eat? Everybody gets 2 choices. And as long as they're easy enough choices, then I'm like, yep, that's fine. Now, my son will always say burgers and steak, and I make him choose one and then choose something else that's got chicken in it or something. But then I'll quite happily add it to the planner if that's okay, as long as it's reasonable. And then when it's their turn for their meal that they get, they're all excited. Brilliant. This is the one that I wanted. But you're then not allowed to complain when it's your sister's turn. So if your sister wanted fish pie, then that's fine. And if you complain, you miss out on your next choice. somebody else gets to make that choice. Does that make sense? So a really good way of keeping the peace with meal planning. Another good top tip for anybody is just think about in terms of your protein. So do you want one night fish, one night chicken, one night meat, one night vegetarian? Do you want to work it like that? One night a takeaway. By the time you sort of roughly put it out like that, then it's easier to think about the meals that you've got. The little meal planner book that I've got, I'd say it gives you bits where you can write down your top 10 meals that you like eating, what everybody likes eating in your family, what nights you're busy, what nights you're not, and then you can fill it in, and it just makes life a lot easier.
Fantastic. So given that you are kind of a time saving and kind of productivity expert, I'd love to also know, where do you use batching elsewhere in your life?
Oh gosh, Nikki, I batch everything. So my publishers are HarperCollins, and I keep saying to them, when can I do my Batch Your Life book? Because that's the one that I really want to do. So I sort of skipped over slightly how I got this book deal, but basically a friend of mine used to be an agent in London, and she introduced me to some people, and she's got some very famous friends, and I went down to one of their houses, and he let me do a demo in his house to some TV networks, and they did a pilot of a show called Batch Your Life, which TV shows take years and years to come out, but it's still in the pipeline. So we did a pilot for that. And then with that pilot, then we were able to go to sort of publishers and say, we have a pilot for a TV program. Would you like to do this? And the publishers loved the batch cooking side of it, and they were like, yep, we definitely want. So I'm going down a food route just now, which is amazing, and everybody is loving it. But actually I have tons of other things that I batch in my life that are all about saving time, because a bit like when we were talking about meal planning, Nikki, all it is, what I would say batching is it's mindfulness of getting all that information that as women have that is like flying about in our heads all over the place, and putting it on paper in an order. Does that make sense? Getting it out your head and getting it down, and all of a sudden it's more manageable that way. So for example, last night, do you want to know what I did? I batched my wardrobe. So I have been living in sort of, probably like lots of people working from home, I've been living in jeans and a long sleeve white t-shirt and a pair of trainers for months and months and months now. The weather's getting nicer in Scotland now, and we're just starting to get some nice weather, and I'm starting to pull out those summer clothes. But when you're in that mix of, gosh, what was I wearing last summer? What still fits? What doesn't fit? And one of the things that I hate is when you wake up in the morning, my weight can vary from, like, I could be a 12 one time, I could be a 16 the next. So I have to try everything on every summer and see what actually fits. And so last night I took an hour and a half, and I thought, right, I'm going to choose some stuff out that I remember wearing last summer, try it on, tried on a few long maxi dresses. Right, that's great. Put the maxi dress on the floor. What would I wear with that? I would wear a little denim jacket, and I would also wear a little pair of like navy pumps. Sit them beside it. What bag would I have? I'll wear my leather satchel. I lay that down. I take a photograph of it. I do that with 10 outfits. That's me. I don't have to think about it now. 10 outfits that I've got is a picture on my phone that I can go, yep, I know the shoes that match the jacket with the thing. And no matter what, I've got ones for work. I've got ones for weekends. I've got a few for fancy evenings. And I've got my gym stuff. And I don't need to think about it anymore.
So, oh my gosh, that's genius. Because another thing, because I'm just thinking, the wasted time that I've had staring at my fridge with all my ingredients in is very similar to the wasted time I've stood in my wardrobe going, I haven't got a clue what I'm going to wear.
Yeah.
But to have those outfits and a photograph, that's brilliant.
Yeah. And the thing is, you're really sleepy in the morning, or I certainly am. And also you're trying to get the kids ready, and you're trying to think about what you've got ongoing, what are you doing that day? So that was me batching for the season, if you see what I mean, like for the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks. And then I'll probably do another one just for us getting into high summer. But also what that actually does, if we look at mindfulness as well, it's allowed you, just backtracking, on a Sunday night, I spend 15 minutes, I get my diary, I look at what I've got on the week ahead, what mornings I go to the gym, what mornings I've got meetings, when I'm doing a sort of like a live Zoom recorded or anything, and what I need. And then I just quickly pull the outfits to one side of my wardrobe. So I've already got a rough idea throughout the week. That takes 15 minutes. What that means in terms of like headspace and mindfulness is I wake up, I know that's the outfit that I'm going to wear. I put it on and it fits. I don't stand there almost crying, going, oh, I think I wanted to wear that, but it doesn't zip up, take it off, throw it on the floor, try something else on. I start my day off well. And I think that's massive for anybody that is a working mum that is just juggling anything. If you can start feeling like, hey, I can do this, I'm in control of this day, is really helpful.
Absolutely. And you said a term earlier, which was about doing things that your future self will thank you for. And I can absolutely see that. It's almost taking the time up front, but it saves you massive amount of time and energetically and emotionally as well.
Yeah. And just to say for anybody listening, like you should never feel like this is like out with your, I mean, okay, I study time management and so I'm excited by this sort of stuff, but never feel like, oh, I don't have the time to do that. It is what I do with Batch Lady is break everything down, like, so it took me an hour last night. It takes me 15 minutes on a Sunday. I would spend more than 15 minutes on a Tuesday trying to find the matching shoes and a pair of tights that don't have a ladder in them if I hadn't have been organized enough, So it's just about changing your mindset to thinking about things in advance. And once you are, like I now work a week in advance of my whole life, if you see what I mean. I'm always like thinking about this week, I'm working on next week's stuff. And so I don't have that sort of, I'm not in survival mode. I am in mindful mode, basically, as you mentioned the other day.
Love that. Absolutely love it. To get ahead of yourself just buys you so much space in your life, time, but also that headspace.
Yeah, exactly.
So could you share one other thing that you do in terms of batching in your life?
Right. I'm going to give you one for working mums out there with kids that have just gone back to school. Presents for kids in your class, in your children's class, drives me insane because your child comes home. I live in the middle of nowhere, so I pick them up, drive all the way home. Takes us 40 minutes drive home. And I get home and some child will say to me, it's Lucy's birthday tomorrow, we have to bring a present in. And I go, what? I am nowhere near a shop. So years ago, I changed that. Now what we do is the school will give you a list of names and they'll give you your birthdays if you ask them, or you can get them from the other mums in the class at the beginning of the year. Get everybody's birthday down, look at how many girls you've got, how many boys you've got. I then take my kids shopping. I take them sometimes just to Tesco. They have a certain amount. I say, buy something small for a girl and something for a boy that you want, and they buy 12 of those girl things, 12 of those boy things. We buy a pack of cards that are like 10 pack, that say happy birthday on them, and we put them in the cupboard ready to go for the year ahead. That way, as soon as it's somebody's birthday, there's a card, there's a present. What that means as well is you have just negated all that stress of running about, probably spending £15 when you wanted to spend a fiver. And you're organized. And also you are allowing your child to sort of own that, well, they've chosen the present, they can go and wrap it up. And you can buy even these in Tesco, you get these little gift bags that you get like a pack of 10 for £2, all of a sudden you just put it in the gift bag, put the card in and they're off. And and it's something in your house. And it takes literally, if you buy something small, a drawer space. And you're organized. And you can do that in 1 hour. You could do it this week in 1 hour. You could say, right, I don't even know when their birthdays are, but I'm buying 6 boys and 6 girls presents, and you're already ahead of the game.
Brilliant. Oh, I love it. Suzanne, I need you in my life. So whenever that program comes out, I'm going to be watching it.
Thank you. One day, hopefully.
So there's so much goodness that you've shared with us today. But if there was just one thing that you hope a working mum who's listening to this can take away, what would that be?
It would be to just, I would say, just change one thing. If you are feeling overwhelmed listening to this, going, oh, where am I going to start? If there was going to be one thing that you changed, it's every time you make a meal, double it. You don't have to think about anything else. Double it and put one in the freezer. It will change your life. It will revolutionize your life. Before you know it, you'll just feel organized. And what will happen is, even if you think, I'll never use that, see, on the day that you do use it, you'll think, that was bloody genius, I'm doing that again.
Yes. And I would add in that if people want to get one of your books, the inspiration in there, because sometimes you can think, I want to do it, but I don't know what meal to start with, is the inspiration in your book. As you say, it's really practical, family-focused food. So I went through, and I love recipe books. My husband tells me off because I've kind of almost got an addiction to them. But normally there's kind of like 20% of the recipes, I think, oh yeah, we could use those. In your book, I was like, oh yeah, and that one, and that one. Oh gosh, and that one, and that one. And so for me, and I'm hoping that will be the case, and it absolutely will be, with the success you've had. Other people will be the same, that these apply for us.
Yeah, I think, well, my first book got Sunday Times best-selling author, and I think that was partly because it was meals that I ate all the time. It was meals that the majority of us as working mums feeding kids is what we eat all the time. And I want to stick to that as an ethos. I get asked all the time, oh, would you do a book on this? Would you do a cookery book on that? And sometimes it just doesn't work with me. I'm like, no, because in general, it takes too long. That's not what we want to do. I think I'm living through this life as every other working mum is. And so we sort of know what works and what doesn't if you've done it. And God, if I could go back to I've got now a 12 and 14-year-old, and if I could go back to when they were 2 years old, how I'd be so even more organized. Be like, right, I know exactly how this works. So I would also say the books, what they allow you to do is, I tell you what freezes well. I tell you how long it takes if you cook it from frozen or if you cook it from fresh, and how to reheat it. And so it takes that thought out for you guys, because actually that is where I'm the professional in it. And so it's easy for me to do. And actually you guys are being lawyers and doctors and whatever else you're doing, and running your own businesses and all this stuff. So you've got your own bits. You don't need to know about how to defrost something. You just need to follow somebody else's guidelines is probably the easiest way. Don't put it in your head as using up headspace if you don't have to.
Brilliant. And I think you've just given us all like one of the best gifts ever, Suzanne, in that what you've shared will undoubtedly save at least an hour a week. That's been really, on the cautious side. And that's a gift that just keeps giving, because there's no cost that you can put on that. So if people want to find out more about you and your work, which I'm sure they will, where would you direct them to? And I'll put all the links to these in the show notes for people.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so I have a website, www.batchlady.com. And you can follow me on all social media on @thebatchlady. So it's the same for everything, just @thebatchlady. So whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, I'm on YouTube on The Batch Lady. And if you're looking for my books, they are on Amazon. They're all titled The Batch Lady and then have a smaller title underneath. So if you just put in The Batch Lady, they'll come up. And they're on Amazon. They're in nearly all supermarkets, I think, at the moment. You'll get them. Certainly my last book, The Healthy Family Favourites, and all bookshops as well. Nationwide. You'll find them anywhere.
Amazing. Thank you. And I know that I'm going to be checking out more of your stuff, and can't wait for what else you release. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, no, thank you for having me. I've absolutely loved it. Thanks, all you ladies listening.
If you've enjoyed this episode of Wisdom for Working Mums, please share it on social media and with your friends and family. I'd love to connect with you too. So if you head over to wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk, you'll find a link on how to do this. And if you love the show and really want to support it, please go to iTunes, write a review and subscribe. You'll be helping another working mum find this resource too. Thanks so much for listening.